The Zolthar arrived without warning. Their massive ships, dark as voids in space, tore through Earth's atmosphere like meteors. Their technology was leagues ahead of anything humanity had ever known. Force fields that absorbed every projectile, weapons capable of vaporizing entire cities with a single blast, and armies of robotic soldiers designed to obliterate any form of resistance. Their assault began without negotiation, without diplomacy. Earth was merely a target, and the Zolthar were swift in their destruction. In the span of hours, Earth's military forces were crippled. The world's most powerful nations had spent decades developing advanced defense systems, but they were powerless against the Zolthar's overwhelming might. The skies were filled with fire as the invaders' ships decimated cities, their laser weapons carving scars across the landscape. The military tried to retaliate, launching fighter jets and missiles, but they were no match for the Zolthar's advanced energy shields. The Zolthar's leader, Commander Rook, ordered a planetary bombardment, ensuring that any semblance of organized defense would be shattered. The news broadcasted across the world, showing entire cities reduced to rubble. The oceans boiled as alien warships drilled into the Earth's crust. Governments fell into chaos. Leaders fled, nations bickered, and the world seemed on the brink of annihilation. For the first time in history, humanity faced the undeniable truth. They were powerless in the face of an enemy more advanced, more ruthless than anything they had ever imagined. Yet, amid the devastation, something stirred within the hearts of humanity. In the shadow of their greatest crisis, a spark of unity began to glow. For decades, humans had been divided by politics, by war, by ideology, but now, facing the extinction of their species, they had no choice but to come together. Survivors from every corner of the globe found refuge in hidden bunkers, underground cities, and remote strongholds. Across borders, religious divides, and centuries-old conflicts, a single truth resonated. Earth had been invaded, and humanity would not go down without a fight. And that's when Commander Sarah Hawkins, a decorated officer who had once commanded peacekeeping missions, found herself standing before the emergency communications console. Her heart raced as she looked into the camera, but her voice was steady as she broadcasted the final message. You wanted war. Prepare for humanity's wrath. The message echoed through every communication channel. It was an act of defiance, but also a declaration. The Zolthar had underestimated humanity. They had seen Earth as an easy target, but they didn't know that humans had one thing no alien species could ever replicate: an unbreakable will to survive. With that message, the war had truly begun. The invaders would soon learn that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humanity's wrath could not be so easily extinguished. The first few weeks of the invasion were a nightmare. Earth's largest cities had been leveled, and countless lives were lost. The Zolthar had shown no mercy, and the world trembled beneath the weight of their might. But in the face of this devastation, something unexpected began to unfold. Humans, often underestimated for their frailties, began to reveal their greatest strength: their unyielding spirit. Commander Sarah Hawkins, now leading a fragmented resistance, knew that Earth couldn't fight back with sheer firepower alone. Humanity had to be smarter, more strategic. The Zolthar had underestimated humans for too long, believing them to be primitive and weak. But the humans had a secret weapon, an ancient technology, long thought to be myth, buried deep beneath the Earth's surface. It was called the Chrono Engine, a relic from a forgotten era, rumored to possess the power to manipulate gravitational fields and even alter time itself. Scientists and historians had dismissed it as a fairy tale, but Hawkins knew that if humanity was to have any hope of survival, this weapon had to be real. So, she organized a covert mission to find it. In the dark corners of a world in chaos, a team of brilliant minds, engineers, physicists, and archaeologists, worked in secret to unlock the mysteries of the Chrono Engine. They dug deep beneath the ruins of ancient civilizations, deciphering old texts and following cryptic clues hidden in Earth's lost history. It wasn't long before they uncovered the hidden chamber that contained the powerful artifact. The chrono engine was nothing like any weapon humanity had ever created. It pulsed with an eerie energy, its surface covered in symbols none could understand. But as Hawkins stood before it, the weight of history and humanity's survival pressed heavily on her shoulders. She ordered its activation, praying it would work. The machine hummed to life, and for a brief moment, time seemed to warp around them. The power surge sent a shockwave through the planet, disrupting the Zolfar's technology. Suddenly, their once impenetrable shields flickered. Communications between their ships broke down. The invaders were momentarily disoriented. The humans knew they had only moments to act. Hawkins ordered a counterattack. Using guerrilla tactics and knowledge of Zolfar vulnerabilities gained through the chrono engine, Earth's resistance fighters struck hard and fast. Small groups of soldiers, armed with weapons adapted from the stolen technology, targeted weak points in the Zolfar fleet. They attacked supply lines, ambushed patrols, and sabotaged communications, causing chaos and confusion among the invaders. The Zolfar were stunned. For the first time, they were not facing helpless civilians but a force that could strike back with precision. Commander Rook, ever confident in his empire's superiority, could no longer ignore the reality that Earth's defenders were far from defeated. Humanity was showing them something they had never seen before: a resolve to fight, to push back, and to win at all costs. And with each strike, humanity's confidence grew. The chrono engine had turned the tide of war, but it was the human spirit, the refusal to surrender, that would see them through. Earth was not defeated. Earth was waking up. The tides of war had shifted, but the fight was far from over. The Zolfar, now facing unexpected resistance, recalibrated their approach. Commander Rook, who had once dismissed humanity as insignificant, was forced to rethink his strategy. He began deploying more devastating weapons, targeting Earth's remaining military strongholds with greater intensity. The brutal counterattacks only hardened his resolve to wipe out the human infestation once and for all. Meanwhile, humanity's resistance continued to grow stronger. The chrono engine had given them a taste of victory, but it was their ingenuity that truly turned the war in their favor. Resistance cells, which had once been scattered and disorganized, now operated as a unified force. Small victories, whether in the form of disabling the Zolfar supply ship or rescuing a key city from the brink of destruction, bolstered human morale. People began to believe in the possibility of survival, and humanity's indomitable will to fight became their most potent weapon. It was in these moments of defiance that Earth's greatest asset became clear: the collective genius of its people. Scientists, engineers, and inventors from across the globe came together in a collaborative effort to develop new, innovative technologies that could challenge the Zolfar's overwhelming might. In hidden labs and underground bunkers, human engineers constructed weapons capable of disrupting the Zolfar's advanced shields and technology. Homemade EMP bombs, laser-guided missiles, and newly designed stealth drones became the tools of resistance. One of humanity's most striking successes came in the form of a hacked Zolfar warship captured during a raid on a supply line. The ship was smaller than the massive dreadnoughts that had laid waste to Earth's cities, but it was packed with advanced technology that had been out of humanity's reach. A team of engineers managed to reverse engineer key components, discovering weaknesses in the Zolfar's shields and weapons systems. Within weeks, a modified fleet of human warships equipped with this stolen technology was ready to strike. The first battle involving these new ships was nothing short of a miracle. A fleet of Zolfar warships, led by Rook himself, had advanced into Earth's orbit, preparing for an all-out attack on the planet's last remaining strongholds. What they didn't anticipate was the ferocity of the human counteroffensive. The newly developed warships, equipped with weapons that could bypass the Zolfar's shields, tore into the invaders' fleet with precision. The battle was brutal, but for the first time since the invasion began, the Zolfar were forced to retreat. Commander Hawkins watched the battle unfold from Earth's command center. The sight of Zolthar ships fleeing from the fight was a victory she could scarcely believe. But it was just the beginning. Humanity had proven something fundamental to the universe, that they could fight back, that they could adapt and learn from their enemies, and above all, that they would never give up. As the Zolthar regrouped, they knew the war was far from over. But humanity had sent a clear message. The Earth was not theirs for the taking. The Zolthar had underestimated the power of humanity's will, but they had made another grave mistake. They had given humanity a taste of victory. The retreat of their fleet was not a defeat. It was the spark that ignited something much greater. Earth's defenses were no longer a series of disjointed cells fighting for survival. Now they were a single, unified force, and with every passing day, humanity's resolve grew stronger. Commander Rook's pride had been wounded, but his arrogance remained. In response to the unexpected resistance, he doubled down on his efforts, launching an all-out offensive to crush the human rebellion once and for all. The Zolthar's most advanced warships, larger and more heavily armored than anything the humans had faced, were deployed to Earth's orbit, their weapons capable of annihilating entire continents in a single strike. The aliens believed that the remaining pockets of resistance were no more than a nuisance, but the humans had something the Zolthar didn't, a desperate will to survive. Beneath the ruins of what had once been the heart of human civilization, the chrono engine was reactivated. The technology, ancient and mysterious, was humanity's last hope, and they had learned to harness it more effectively with each use. As the device hummed to life once again, a wave of gravitational energy rippled outward from the planet's core. The Zolthar felt it immediately, an unsettling pull that disrupted their ship systems and forced them to readjust their flight paths. They had experienced minor glitches before, but this was something entirely different. This was an unforeseen weapon. The chrono engine, still largely a mystery to both the humans and their alien foes, had grown more powerful with each use. With each pulse of energy, it bent time and space itself, creating powerful energy surges that destabilized the very fabric of the Zolthar's technological superiority. Their once invincible shields began to flicker, their communication systems faltered, and their weapons malfunctioned. For the first time, the Zolthar found themselves on the defensive. The tide had irrevocably shifted. Hawkins had been preparing for this moment, knowing full well that the chrono engine was humanity's ultimate card. Using the disruptions caused by the engine, she issued a series of devastating strikes against the Zolthar's most important command ships. Using coordinated attacks from the modified human warships, the resistance tore through the ranks of the invaders with brutal efficiency. The very weapons the Zolthar had used to obliterate Earth's cities were now being turned against them. The Zolthar's massive fleet, once thought to be invulnerable, was breaking apart. Large warships fell from the sky, crashing into the surface of Earth or into the vast reaches of space. The Zolthar, who had seen countless civilizations fall beneath their boot heels, were now forced to witness the unimaginable, an alien species they had dismissed as insignificant, pushing back with relentless fury. Yet even in the face of their retreat, Commander Rook refused to acknowledge that the Zolthar were in peril. He ordered his forces to regroup for a final assault, believing it would be enough to crush humanity once and for all. But his overconfidence was his downfall. The Zolthar had failed to account for one simple truth. Humanity's wrath, once unleashed, could not be stopped. The war had reached a critical point, with the Zolthar fleet in disarray and Earth's defenders growing bolder with each passing day. Commander Hawkins knew that humanity had a fleeting window of opportunity to strike a decisive blow. But amidst the mounting victories, a new complication arose. A message from an unexpected source. A group of Zolthar defectors, those who had grown disillusioned with the Empire's oppressive regime, made contact with the human resistance. They called themselves the Nexari, a faction of Zolthar who had long opposed the militaristic control of their people. They offered a proposition. In exchange for an alliance with Earth, they would provide critical intelligence on Zolthar tactics, help infiltrate high-ranking officials within the Empire, and offer their knowledge of key weaknesses in the Zolthar fleet. In return, they sought sanctuary on Earth and the promise of a place in humanity's post-war future. Hawkins, initially skeptical, understood the necessity of alliances if humanity were to succeed. The offer was tempting. The Zolfar were powerful, and the prospect of a betrayal from within their ranks could tip the scales in humanity's favor. However, there was one undeniable truth that Hawkins could not ignore. The Nexari were still Zolfar. Despite their defection, they carried with them centuries of culture and ideology that may not align with humanity's long-term goals. The risk of trusting them was enormous, but so too was the risk of losing the war. After tense deliberations with her closest advisors, Hawkins made the decision. Earth would accept the Nexari offer, but they would not be trusted blindly. A strict monitoring system would be put in place, and any signs of betrayal would be met with swift retaliation. Humanity could not afford to make mistakes now. The Nexari infiltrators helped Earth's forces with critical intelligence that resulted in the capture of several Zolfar supply ships and the disabling of vital communication channels. But as Hawkins and her team grew closer to victory, the seeds of doubt began to sprout. Whispers emerged within the ranks of the human resistance. Could they trust their new allies? Were the Nexari truly committed to fighting for humanity's freedom, or were they simply seeking to carve out a new empire for themselves? The situation became more complicated when Commander Rook himself contacted Hawkins, offering a shocking revelation. The Nexari had been operating as double agents all along, feeding humanity false intelligence in an attempt to weaken their resistance. The truth struck like a dagger. These defectors, who had seemed like a beacon of hope, were manipulating humanity in ways no one could have anticipated. Betrayed and angry, Hawkins knew that the war had just taken a darker turn. The Nexari had played both sides, and now humanity would face not only the Zolfar Empire, but also the threat of their treachery. But Hawkins would not falter. Betrayal was a bitter pill to swallow, but it only fueled her resolve to see humanity's fight to its final, unrelenting conclusion. The war for Earth had taken a new shape, but humanity would not be cowed. The betrayal of the Nexari shook humanity's resolve, but Commander Hawkins refused to let it break the momentum that had been built. With the Nexari exposed as traitors, Earth's resistance forces tightened their ranks. While the Nexari had sabotaged some critical operations, the core of humanity's defenses remained intact. The traitors had underestimated Earth's ability to adapt, and they would pay the price for their deception. Meanwhile, the Zolfar Empire, having learned of the Nexari's failure, prepared for its final assault on Earth. Commander Rook, humiliated by the continued resistance, unleashed his full might. Massive dreadnoughts, capable of leveling entire continents with a single barrage, were positioned above Earth's atmosphere. The Zolfar had chosen to finish what they had started. Earth would either fall under their rule, or it would be reduced to nothing but a barren wasteland. Humanity, though bruised and betrayed, had something the Zolfar never anticipated: a collective will that refused to yield. Hawkins, in her usual calm but steely manner, addressed her command staff. "This is the final push. We fight not just for our survival, but for every future generation of humankind. We make them regret ever setting foot on this planet." A sense of unity, the likes of which had never been seen before, spread through the ranks. Human forces, now well equipped with both their own weaponry and stolen Zolfar technology, prepared to defend the planet they loved. The Chrono Engine, with all its unpredictable power, was the centerpiece of the defense strategy. Hawkins and her engineers had refined the technology, now able to create massive gravitational anomalies to disrupt the trajectory of enemy ships, tearing apart their fleets before they could even land. The first strike came at dawn. Thousands of human fighters launched from Earth's remaining bases, coordinated by a powerful artificial intelligence built to anticipate Zolfar moves. The battle in space was fierce, with Zolfar warships laying waste to human fighters. But humanity's tactics, unpredictable, resourceful, and daring, began to unravel the Zolfar's rigid strategy. The greatest victory came when a Galactic fleet of human warships, using the chrono engine to create time dilation bubbles, ambushed a Zolthar dreadnought in an unexpected location. The ship, unable to react fast enough, was torn apart by human firepower. It was a victory, but at a tremendous cost. The humans lost some of their most experienced pilots, and Earth's forces had been pushed to their limits. However, with the dreadnought destroyed, Earth's defenders made a critical breakthrough. The Zolthar, realizing their prized warships were no longer invulnerable, began to withdraw, slowly at first, but soon in full retreat. For the first time in the war, the invaders were running. But Commander Rook, wounded in pride and with his empire crumbling, refused to accept defeat. He ordered a final, desperate assault, one that would level Earth's cities to make sure humanity would never again rise. This was the endgame. If humanity was to survive, they would have to face the Zolthar's last wrath, and they would have to do so on their own terms. The Zolthar were retreating, but their pride would not allow them to leave Earth unscathed. Commander Rook, knowing that the war was slipping from his grasp, ordered a devastating final assault, an orbital bombardment unlike any humanity had ever seen. The Zolthar's ultimate weapon, the Doomflare cannon, was positioned above the Earth's atmosphere, a massive laser capable of annihilating entire regions with a single concentrated blast. If it fired, it would scorch the planet's surface, obliterating human civilization and ensuring that nothing would remain but ruin. The humans, battered but unbroken, were well aware of the stakes. Hawkins, along with her senior command staff, gathered in the heart of the last remaining Earth Defense Command Center. The atmosphere was heavy, tense. Their best forces had been depleted, and their remaining resources were scarce. But the enemy had underestimated one thing: humanity's capacity for hope, for resilience, and for sheer defiance in the face of oblivion. The Zolthar think they can destroy us with one last blow, Hawkins said, her voice unwavering despite the gravity of the situation. But they're wrong. This is not how the war ends. She turned to the gathered commanders. They had already made their plan. The key to their survival lay in a daring, dangerous mission, one that no one had ever attempted. A small, elite team of soldiers and engineers, including some of the Nexari defectors who had proven their loyalty, would infiltrate the Zolthar flagship and destroy the Doomflare cannon from within. It was a suicide mission, but there was no other option. As the team prepared for their mission, Hawkins addressed them one last time. "You are Earth's last hope. If you succeed, we may have a chance to drive the Zolthar off our planet for good. If you fail, Earth will burn. But no matter what happens, you will have given humanity its final chance to live." With the stakes as high as they could possibly be, the team embarked on their mission. Using advanced stealth technology and newly designed anti-Zolthar weaponry, they infiltrated the Zolthar flagship, dodging security systems and fighting their way through enemy lines. Every step brought them closer to their target, but the Zolthar were relentless. The human team encountered fierce resistance, facing waves of Zolthar soldiers and automated defenses, but they pressed on, knowing that the fate of Earth depended on their success. Back on Earth, the remaining human forces launched a desperate counteroffensive to distract the Zolthar forces. Fighter jets and bombers attacked key targets on the Zolthar ships, creating chaos and disarray. This gave the infiltrating team the precious time they needed to reach the Doomflare cannon. The air was thick with tension, and every moment felt like an eternity. As they breached the final defense perimeter and entered the heart of the flagship, the countdown began. The team planted explosives on the Doomflare cannon's core, the only way to ensure its destruction. The Zolthar were coming for them, and they knew they had only minutes to escape. The explosion would either tear apart the Zolthar's weapon or end everything. "Ready?" Hawkins' voice crackled over the comms, her words steely as ever. "We're ready," came the reply. "For Earth." The countdown echoed through the comms, every second dragging on like an eternity. The team, now deep within the heart of the Zolfar flagship, had planted the explosives, but the odds were against them. Zolfar soldiers closed in, their weapons drawn and eyes glowing with a deadly intent. The air was thick with the tension of impending doom. They could hear the hum of the doom flare cannon powering up above them, the machine that could end it all, the final weapon of annihilation. "We don't have much time," Lieutenant Mira Delgado, one of the elite resistance soldiers, said, her voice tight with urgency. "If we don't make it out in the next 3 minutes, Earth is done." Commander Sarah Hawkins, her face hard and resolute, turned to the team. "We fight our way out, or we don't fight at all. The moment that cannon fires, Earth becomes a graveyard. For humanity, this is it." There was no more hesitation. They were beyond fear now, with only one goal in mind: survive long enough to finish their mission. The team moved as one, cutting down the Zolfar soldiers who charged at them with relentless precision. There was no time for mercy, no room for error. They fought with everything they had, their backs to the wall, knowing that every moment was a moment closer to either saving their world or losing it forever. But as they moved through the corridors, something unexpected happened. The Zolfar began to falter. The Nexari defectors, once seen as betrayers, now revealed their true loyalty. They turned on the Zolfar, sabotaging their weapons and clearing the path for the human soldiers. For Earth, one of them shouted as they engaged the remaining Zolfar forces. The shift was subtle at first, but it was enough to buy the team more time. Back on Earth, the resistance fighters launched their final assault. The remaining Zolfar forces now split between trying to hold back the humans and protecting their flagship, were in disarray. The tide of battle had turned in ways even the Zolfar could not have predicted. The last of their fleets were retreating, and the ground troops who had once dominated Earth were now scrambling to maintain control. With 2 minutes left on the clock, the team reached the final chamber, the core of the doom flare cannon. Delgado, ever the technician, began to rig the explosives to the cannon's energy core. Her fingers flew across the controls, sweat dripping down her face. The Zolfar were closing in, but the team fought them off with everything they had. "Delgado, we're not going to make it if you don't hurry," shouted Sergeant Jack Rios, who was holding the door against another wave of Zolfar soldiers. "I've got it," Delgado replied, her voice steady despite the chaos. 5 seconds. The countdown on her device synced with the one on Earth. The final moments were the most agonizing. Hawkins could hear the distant hum of the doom flare cannon charging up, knowing that if the weapon fired, it would destroy everything in its path. But just as the cannon began to charge for its final shot, the explosion rang out. The doom flare cannon erupted in a blinding flash, and the massive Zolfar flagship trembled as if it were about to collapse under its own weight. The entire ship shook violently, and the Zolfar forces who had once believed themselves invincible now found themselves thrown into utter chaos. "We did it," Delgado's voice crackled over the comms. "The doom flare cannon is gone." The flagship, now crippled beyond repair, began to break apart in the vacuum of space, its pieces drifting into the abyss. Earth had survived. For now. As Hawkins stood at the helm of humanity's remaining forces, watching the Zolfar retreat into the darkness of space, she allowed herself a single moment of quiet relief. It wasn't over yet. There was still work to be done, but humanity had faced the worst it could possibly endure and emerged victorious. The war for Earth was over, and humanity had proven one undeniable truth: you do not underestimate the wrath of humanity.